All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. And thank you for joining us today here at Brother Counsel Studios. We have a very special show. I'm very excited about this guest. I'm excited to get into a new case. You guys know I've been covering a lot of the cases that you already are very familiar with. Karen Reed ad nauseum. We know the civil case of Karen Reed is coming up, or it's in the middle in the process. We've got Turtle Boy's case that we're following very closely. And actually, we just did 2 weeks of Casey Anthony's trial, and we did a recap of that. So, you guys kind of know what I've been covering, and we do know that we have some cases on the horizon coming up. We know we have Brian Walsh's case coming up. We have the au pair. We have Courtney Clenny. We also have Corey Richards coming up in 2026. So we all know about these cases. But then I got some information from a good friend of mine, actually, a friend that was on the show. You may know him. His name is Mick Patel. Mick Patel was from Georgia, and he was arrested for a bunch of baloney, pretending that he was kidnapping somebody, and that case was dismissed, thankfully, which is the right choice by the prosecution. And now Mick Patel is actually filing a lawsuit against all the people that were involved in his prosecution because he actually sat in jail. So I got wind of this case, Natasha's case, from Mick, my good friend Mick, because this is Natasha's also from Georgia. And, there's a lot of things going on all the time that you can't always catch. So that's why we need people like you, the people that are following this channel and helping me out and sending me emails with ideas for new cases that are not maybe as public as some of the other high-profile cases. But these cases also need our attention, and they should be highlighted because, there's a lot of injustice going around, and there's a lot of very good police officers out there doing a great job putting their life on the line. And then there's also some other bad apples that we have to weed out. And we're going to hear today about Natasha's story. So without any further ado, I'd like to thank specifically Natasha for agreeing to come onto the show. We just spoke about this case briefly last week. We're going to do a much more of a deeper dive today. So here is Natasha. Thank you so much, Natasha, for joining the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad that you came. I understand that you have a little bit of a social media presence yourself.
A little bit on TikTok primarily. I just started posting on there one day and it just kind of took off. So.
And what do you post about generally? Just, what's going on with your life, or is there any
what's going on with my life? Normally just, family, or if there's something specific that I want to get out there and draw attention to, I'll start discussing that. If it's important to me. So, just the general everyday stuff.
Okay, and if people can follow you, what's the handle?
It is one and only Natasha.
All right, so that's what you are on TikTok. Anywhere else you're on? Are you on Twitter or anything?
I have a YouTube channel. I don't use it a whole lot. I'm hoping to transition over to it, and it is the Natasha with 3 A's at the end.
Okay, so now that we got everything, we are ready to go. So, what I'd like to do with you, Natasha, we have a lot of background. I know there's a lot of details about your case that we have to unpack, but just to very briefly get into your case, because in order to get to your case, we have to talk a little bit about your son's case.
Right.
So it's kind of, looped in together, obviously separate prosecutions, separate claims, but one kind of led to the next. So what I'd like to do, and also, by the way, I think, is there something on your side that's echoing? Because I heard it initially, but if you've got another screen up there playing or whatever, is
it echoing still? I
don't hear anything, but I know initially it was.
I don't have anything, just you.
Okay, great. All right. So so I'm going to pull up the police report here. This is the arrest report. And okay, you know what? Maybe let me just take myself off and I'll put myself back on just to see if there's something with the echo. Okay, give me 1 second.
Okay. Let me see if it's this volume.
Sometimes, like if you're playing this on YouTube at the same time that you're on with me on StreamYard, that could cause the thing. But if you just have the StreamYard open, that link open, then we should be good. Is that?
Yeah, I only have that link open.
Okay, fine, great. Okay, I'm not hearing any echo anymore, and I'm hoping it's not for anybody else either. Let me just check the audio one more second. Make sure we're all good here. Yeah, as far as I see, we're all good. Okay, so let's pull up the arrest report here, and I hope you can see it. I highlighted certain areas, and this is what I like to start with. So initially, the way that this all got started was that there was a policeman, we're going to hear more about him, who was at the side of the road, or that's what he says. He was at the side of the road, and he was patrolling. And now he says like this: I activated my emergency lights and siren. And I'm hearing the echo again. I'm not sure if it's you or me, but hopefully it's fine. I activated my emergency lights and siren, conducted a U-turn, and proceeded to catch up to the motorcycle. As I made my way to Highway 92, I lost visual of the motorcycle. So initially, what is he saying? He activated his lights and siren, conducted a U-turn, and tried to catch up to your son who was on the motorcycle, right?
Right. That's what he says.
So it seems from his report that he's got his lights and sirens on, trying to track down your son.
Mm-hmm.
And then your son seems to be trying to run away.
Yeah, that's what he says.
So what actually happened?
So I believe, because mind you, I didn't find out any of this until after, and like I read the police report too. So I don't really talk to my son a whole lot. He's busy. He had just moved back here 2 weeks prior to this incident. He was living in North Carolina. So he had just moved back and was living in an apartment with his girlfriend. And it happened to be, I was at Jumping World, and then I had picked him up. So it was only like an 8-minute drive. So he, didn't tell me a whole lot about it. It wasn't until I got that report. But my understanding from reading the report, what I believe to have happened is potentially that he, passed the motorcycle, saw that it was speeding, attempted to slow down, make a U-turn, maybe catch up to this motorcycle that was already speeding, and he was not able to do so. He said in the report there was another officer, I forget what his name is.
Yeah, right here. Officer Fullenweiger.
Yeah. I've seen a couple videos on him. So apparently he's on, Shields of Shame has an entire like album of Cherokee County YouTube videos. So, but apparently I guess this officer as well was sitting somewhere and activated their lights. But what I believe to have happened is this motorcycle passed him speeding. He was unable to turn around and catch up to it. And it bothered him clearly. So he turned to flock cameras and used flock cameras to track down a motorcycle.
Yeah. Now, before we move on, we're going to get to that in a minute, but if this is the extent, and again, your son was arrested for fleeing and eluding,
right,
running away from police. Now, you very often will see where the police will say, and I followed the person for blocks, for exits. The person was very clearly saw my lights. I was right behind him. And therefore, to establish that this person was actually running away from the police. Here, this paragraph is really the extent of the allegations of fleeing and eluding. And all you see from, and this is in the most favorable light to the police officer, you would imagine. This is the way that he's writing it himself. This is his narrative, that he did a U-turn and he lost visual. He proceeded to try to catch up to the motorcycle and then lost visual of his motorcycle. It doesn't say that I was following him for miles, following him for more than how close he got to the car. Nothing. It was just like, it seems like it's not clear from here at all that your son actually even knew that he was behind him. He tried to catch up to him and, he wasn't able to.
Yeah, and you'll see, like, even in the report, he goes out of his way to mention, when he's mentioning all these, the Department of Transportation videos or the, flock camera images, he goes out of his way to say that he entered those into, I think, evidence.com. But at no point does he say anything about any sort of dash cam. He doesn't say anything about radioing it in. He doesn't say anything about any sort of like incident report. And I'm sorry, but when I'm thinking of a high speed, somebody's fleeing, all of those things would exist. And we also need to keep in mind that he wrote this report after he did everything that he did. So, there's some information in there, for instance, him going to my son's apartment and asking questions that really don't make sense to me. He mentions that he spoke with someone at the apartment who identified like my son and then my son's girlfriend. And then it was like this whole other, he doesn't want to ride it because there's a bunch of cops or something around. They had just moved in there 2 weeks before that. They don't know anybody. It's a brand new complex. And then right after that, he said, and then I saw Taylor come outside and walking her dog. Well, how did you even know who Taylor was?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in that complex. How did you know who she was to be asking her that? You know what I mean?
But I think you brought up a great point here. Number one, the dash cam. Number two, the body cam. So where are these dash cam? If he's got his lights and sirens on, there should be dash cam. And then in the dash cam, you should be able to see the motorcycle. And you should be able to see how long he was behind the motorcycle for to substantiate this fleeing and eluding charge that they're charging your son with. And again, we see nothing of that in this report. All we see is his narrative saying, I tried to catch him and I wasn't able to. Lost visual. And then this other guy, Full and Wide or whatever, he also tried to do that. Okay, so moving on. So then basically in order for him, he had to really do an investigation here. And by the way, before I even move on to that, I already got comments about how knowledgeable you are about your own rights, which is, it's important for everyone to be knowledgeable about the rights, but just tell us a little bit, how do you know all about your rights and when to stand up for your rights and when do you need a warrant, things like that, things like the lawyers know. How do you as a individual, and I'm sure you're intelligent, but you're not a lawyer. So how do you know about all this stuff? Did you research it? Do you know it? Is this
So a little bit of research. I did work as a paralegal in family law a long time ago for a little bit, but a little bit of research. And unfortunately, a lot of it has come from a former interaction with the police department. It was after that interaction that I got very nervous, and I just was like, I need to find out how to protect myself as much as I can, which is why I got the cameras and whatnot in the house to begin with, because we had to start looking into it. And then my boyfriend watches a lot of channels like yours, so
well, that automatically shows how smart he is, if he's watching Brother Counsel.
Yeah, well, we watch a lot of crime TV and stuff too, and like I had always laid there and I would watch these, watch them interrogating and asking questions, and they would be read their Miranda, and I would be like, why? I don't understand why they're talking right now, like, why? Shut up. What are you doing? So I've always, because I've seen firsthand how manipulative they'll do I don't know why. You know what I mean? It's like they'll do anything to get something from you, and it's just, yeah.
So you're the one screaming at the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously.
No, but it's something interesting, because something that I do find is that, the good cops have no problem with people knowing their rights. It's always the cops that are trying to get away with something or try to take advantage of people. And then those people actually know their rights. That's when you all of a sudden see people these cops getting upset. Like, hey, you're not supposed to know your rights. I'm supposed to be able to be the one who's the know-it-all here. And once people like you stand up for yourself and know your rights, sometimes you get negative reactions from, not the greatest cops. And that's what we saw here. Okay, so we'll continue. So now the motorcycle gets passed. And how did this officer eventually track down your son?
So he says that he used the flock cameras, went to the apartment complex, said that he had noticed, which this doesn't make sense either, because he said that he noticed a motorcycle. Mind you, this is all following everything that he did, that night. So whether he's telling the truth, who knows? But he says he noticed a motorcycle under a tarp. Well, I don't know how you knew it was a motorcycle under a tarp. You know what I mean? So there's that, but okay. And then
if it was just a tarp that just, circled the bike, that you can kind of see that there's some sort of bike.
Maybe, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what kind it was, but he also said it wasn't there the night before, which doesn't make sense either. So I think it's a big complex. So yeah, he was, and we'll get to that on why I think that he didn't actually know that day. So he had said that somebody was outside. He never mentioned who it was in the report. Nobody still knows. It was just some mystery person who apparently knew my son and his girlfriend and the rest of the details, but had like identified him supposedly. And then Taylor came outside. He said then he further investigated.
And just for everyone to know, Taylor is your son's girlfriend.
Yeah, they lived together. So then he said he left the apartment and followed like the flock cameras to where he had saw a motorcycle earlier that day back to, I guess, like the public shopping center, which is kind of odd too, because that's Cobb County and he's a Cherokee County cop. He's a patrol officer too. So he's not even, an investigator or a detective. And so he followed the flock cameras into Cobb and he went to the public shopping center and he started asking the managers in that area to show him their surveillance cameras. And he says he went to each, place in the shop until he ended up at the pizza place where he noticed, I guess, my son. And he knows my son. Which is crazy that he even remembers him because he's had, one interaction with him when he was in 8th grade, 9th grade. It's been
we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that soon. But so your son was working at this, Papa John's, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, is that your son's only job, Papa John's?
No, he works too. He works, he's not at Papa John's anymore, but at the time he was working 2 jobs. And so he does window installs and new construction.
And Papa John's is his second job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he's extremely hard worker.
He's a good kid. He's quiet. He was a teenager back then, but he moved away. Actually, he did that on his own, and he moved away just so he could, develop into his own self.
Right. So what's so interesting, and I think I'm noticing that people are making this this comment in the chat, is that the amount of investigation this cop did into a speeding is unbelievable. I mean, the amount of investigation. I mean, like, getting all the video cameras, and then, this is like he's investigating a murder. I mean, we've seen murder investigations, less extensive.
You don't even get that much work for those. But he did the same thing with the candy thing. I mean, it was literally in the newspaper.
Right. Okay. So we're going to get to that, but let's first. So now he tracks down your son, and they started having a conversation, and this is what really, got my attention. And I'll pull up the report here again. And so again, this is an extensive report, everybody. You see page 7 of 13. Okay. This is initially started off as a speeding. All right. Mm-hmm. So they're having this conversation, and they're calling him Joseph. Is that your son's first name? Joseph?
It is. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's the same person. So Joseph is insisting that it's not him. And they said, oh, well, you're, the same shoes, the Nike shoes. And all my Karen Reed followers know about Nike shoes, and how Nike shoes can be similar to other types of Nike shoes. Okay, we're not going to get into it, but this is what Joseph says. Joseph provided me with his phone number. Now, this is going to be an important part, right? This is a very essential part to your case. So Joseph provided him, according to the police, with his phone number, so I could call him to let him know when his arrest warrant was signed. Now, does he say that it was his cell phone number? Was he saying it was a landline? Was it his girlfriend's number? Was it your number? I mean, this is a phone number. If you want to get in touch with me, so you can call me to let me know when the arrest warrant was. So that's what he said. It was his phone number, right?
Yeah, he said here, I guess the officer asked him for a number, and so he gave him a number. But I need you to know that after all of this incident, he's and we'll get to it. He swore out another warrant to try to get access to my video cameras at my house. And in that warrant, he put that he gave him a phone number at Papa John's so that he could call him when he had a warrant to search for a backpack and a helmet. So in this report, it's, he gave me a number so that when I have the arrest warrant, but then in the camera warrant, it's so he just lies. He can't even keep up with his own lies.
That's a great catch right there.
I know. I should have been a private investigator.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you should continue.
I put a lot of, when I know, had he not done what he did to me and my younger kids and stuff, and me not knowing him from the past, but when I know that he's dirty, then I just want to look into all of it. So
yeah, I mean, good for you. I mean, you got it, especially now because you're under the gun. So now here we go. It says, I gave Joseph one final opportunity to confess to avoid going to prison for a year. And he replied to me, you can have a good day. I left Papa John's. Okay, now, then I went to, and this is the cop talking. I went to the apartment complex to speak with Taylor further. At this point, her vehicle was no longer there. So he was already made contact with Taylor. He went back to the apartment complex, meaning where your son stayed with Taylor, and she's not there anymore.
But how did he know? How did he know what car Taylor drove? He didn't even know who Taylor was, supposedly. Mind you, it's like, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think he said that initially he went to the apartment complex first and met Taylor, and he was talking to Taylor initially before he went to Publix. I mean, that's what he says in the report.
Right, but at that time, like you got to remember, he wrote this report after he had met Taylor at my home. But prior to that, even talking to her at the apartment, he didn't know who she was, let alone what she drove. You know what I mean? So. And
he actually eventually arrested Taylor, which we'll get to later. So he's using Taylor to get to your son, to get to you.
Right.
And then, okay, so now this is all this tremendous investigation into the speeding, which then he turned into a fleeing and eluding, which there's very little evidence of. But then he continued. I conducted more background investigation on Joseph and Taylor. I located a recent domestic standby call from 7/30/2025 in which Joseph sent Taylor to his mother's house. That's you. 9/21. Okay. To retrieve a vacuum cleaner. This was determined to be a civil matter as Joseph's mother, Natasha Lopez, claimed mutual ownership of the vacuum, and the parties were referred to civil court. I recognized Natasha and the resident from a commercial burglary I worked in 2019 at Hobgood Park, where Joseph and his friends broke into the concession stand and stole items, taking them back to Natasha's house. I also noted an extensive call history at this address. So can you kind of fill in what we're missing here? What's this commercial burglary? Sounds like a very serious case.
He did that, and he does that intentionally, the same as when they issued their public statement. It's an intentional try to control the narrative and make it look some kind of way. They were literally in like 8th grade, 9th grade. It was a group of like 5 or 6 kids. My neighborhood is beside this park. Okay. It's not like they went out of their way to go, rob something. They were dumb. They went there. The kids took candy from the concession stand, and they weren't doing it, I don't think, they were actually eating it. Okay. And so when they ate it, I guess whoever it was that was eating it dropped the wrappers. This officer followed the candy wrappers to my house. I was not at home.
Commercial burglary. Okay. This is serious.
And I wasn't at home. I was, it was on a Saturday, actually. I was getting my CPR certification redone because I work in healthcare. And so only the kids were at home, and he was actually questioning them then. And then they called me. And so I had to come back. And mind you, that's my first time as a mom ever having to deal with a situation like that. And I used to have that mentality until after he did what he did, that, hey, this is holding my kids accountable, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, because at the time he was doing the same thing. He was telling them, oh, it's okay. You just, tell me it won't be that big a deal. And so the kids were like, yeah, like the one kid that took the candy gave him, the candy. Was like, yeah, like we took the candy. A few days later, he came back and charged them with felony commercial burglary. It's a felony. And a lot of those kids took 2-year plea deals and stays on their criminal record. My son, Chris, did not take it. Huh?
It was probation. 2-year
probation.
Yeah,
Chris did not take that deal. Matter of fact, he turned it down. He turned it down twice until I guess all of the other kids took their deals. And then finally they offered him a 6 months and it would go away. So it's not for him to bring it up and it's not even on his record is kind of shitty too in and of itself.
There must be like absolutely no crime in your area. I mean, if these are the types of cases that
it was in the newspaper.
So okay, so you got the commercial burglary there by your son, because that's how this cop remembered this. I mean, this is in 8th grade, you said. So this was how many years ago? I mean,
it was like 6 or 7 years ago.
6 or 7 years ago. Okay, so he remembers this. I mean,
isn't that crazy?
How many cases has he worked on since then? But he remembers.
I know. And I work in healthcare. I couldn't remember. like I can remember patients I have to see all the time, but somebody that I only met one time.
Now, he also said that he noted an extensive call history at this address, at your home. So, I mean, was there an extensive call history from your home? I mean, what's been going on?
No, not from my home. You know, there was the vacuum cleaner situation, which was funny. It was just my son being dramatic, and he was upset at me. He was like, fine, give me my vacuum cleaner back. And I told him no. And that's what he lived in North Carolina. But after that, it was, you know, fine. He was just being a kid. And then there was one other call, and that was New Year's Eve. And so I do not, myself and my partner, we do not argue in front of our children. And New Year's Eve, our kids were sleeping. Matter of fact, I worked New Year's Eve. Our kids were sleeping. We were having a disagreement over moving a gaming PC. So we had one on the front porch. In our neighborhood, everybody's lived here forever. A lot of them are older. I'm Hispanic. I tend to be a little bit loud. You know, the police got called. They came out, which was, we both kind of looked at the officer kind of crazy because we didn't know they were coming. And then they like ran, like this officer just ran to the house. And so it caught us off guard. And we were, you know, telling him, no, like it was just a disagreement about a computer. It's not, you know, not a big deal. And the officers that were there on scene at first, they were fine. And they were like, okay, you know, but then a sergeant showed up, and he was there all of maybe 5 minutes. He asked, you know, who owns the house? And he was asking, you know, but it was like the way he was asking it was very manipulative. So you would have thought it was just like everyday conversation. And he was like, okay. And so he goes outside, and then he comes back in, or the other officer comes back in with a card and a case number, and tells me that they were arresting my boyfriend for criminal trespass. And I was like, what? And I asked him, I was like, how? You know, he lives here. It doesn't matter. He doesn't own the home, is what they told me. After that, I was like, and I immediately started reaching out to like the solicitor and whatnot. But after that is when I got the cameras, and I was like, never again. Like, they're not allowed back on my property. Like, I don't call them anyway.
He was arrested for criminal trespass when you not only invited him into the house, you wanted him in the house.
No, he lives here.
He lives here with you.
Yeah, he lives here. That's why I was like, what? You know, like it was and they didn't care though. They do not care. Matter of fact, you know, he has custody of his daughter. She lives with us. And when they took him to jail, they had to get DFACs involved because he's the parent, you know, and like they said they had to get him involved. But, you know, we had to go through that loop, and I just was like, no, I'm not gonna. But that was it.
So this is the extensive call history that he's talking about from your residence. There's a vacuum cleaner that you were talking to your son about, and then there was this discussion or disagreement that you had with your boyfriend about a computer. Which you stepped outside so that you wouldn't, you know, be in front of the kids when you disagreed. Okay, that's the extensive call history. Okay, so, you know, let's go back to see what else, you know, earth-shattering we're going to find out about you and your terrible criminal record. So I went to Natasha's residence hoping to speak with her. When I arrived, I was surprised to find Taylor's car parked out front as they were fighting over a vacuum cleaner, to the extent law enforcement called just a month prior. So he's surprised that Taylor's car was parked there because you were fighting with Taylor about a vacuum cleaner. It seems like
I didn't even talk to Taylor. Like, that's complete speculation because I didn't, you know, Taylor was just doing what her boyfriend she didn't even come to the house. I think she like stayed up the street, and because she probably felt like, you know, like what I felt like Chris is just being dramatic, you know, like who wants to be, but okay. So yeah, that's speculation.
So he sees Taylor's car there, and he was so confused because, you know, when people have a disagreement over a vacuum cleaner, they'll never speak to each other again, ever, you know, for the rest of their life. Okay, so now I knocked at the door, but no one answered. I went back to my patrol car while parked on the street and began filling out an application for an arrest warrant for Joseph, who is your son, Chris. So now that's what he's claiming. A short time later, a white truck arrived, and that's you?
Yeah.
And so you were driving. So I saw Natasha.
And it wasn't a short time later. He was at my house for over 20 minutes sitting in front. He actually pretended to leave at one point and came back and sat there for another 15 minutes. Like, he didn't even know if I was going to come home. I don't know why he was sitting there.
And I know that we don't want to speculate too much, but would you guess that the reason that perhaps he left is because he saw you got the cameras there, and maybe that your cameras saw a police car, and he maybe thought, well, maybe that's why they don't want to come home, because your cameras are catching a police car and they're going to wait for the police to leave. So
it was either that, or he genuinely thought. Yeah, it was either that or he genuinely thought that somebody was like hiding from him, because he goes in to think that like somebody was like hiding from him. But he rang my doorbell, and my doorbell goes to my phone. It doesn't go to like actually inside the house.
Well, it's a ring, right? It's a ring doorbell.
Right. And so the boys, it's not a ring, which is funny. That is funny because he did swear out a warrant, and that same judge gave him that warrant for Ring LLC, and I don't have Ring LLC. So he did try that. He stalked me on TikTok. He put it in the ring warrant that he was watching my videos on TikTok. So he went that.
You see what type of investigation he does. So I mean, watching your TikTok videos would probably be included. All right, so a short time later, a white truck arrived, and I saw Natasha, Joseph, and at least one smaller child, and Natasha's boyfriend exit. I got out to speak with Natasha in the front yard, who was very standoffish. Natasha remembered me from this concession stand burglary. I told Natasha I was trying to see your son's motorcycle. She asked why. I told her I was investigating him running from me last night. She immediately became defensive, saying, how do you know it was him that was running from you? I politely reminded Natasha that was what I was investigating. Natasha asked if I had already talked to him. I told her I did at Papa John's. I told Natasha again I was trying to find his motorcycle. She told me to go get a warrant, saying he already told me, and at this point I was harassing him. I politely explained to Natasha that I did not want to wrongfully put someone in jail that didn't belong in jail. And I told Natasha I wanted to see if he had a legitimate way to disprove my theory about what took place the previous night. Natasha responded that was not his job and began telling me that my job was to prove the other way around. I told Natasha I absolutely had probable cause to do so and started explaining to her how I previously told Joseph how I tracked him via cameras all the way from his work to his apartment. Before I could even finish politely explaining this to Natasha, she aggressively spoke over me, telling me again to go get a warrant. Is that pretty much sums up pretty accurately what happened, or is there anything that's missing there?
Well, he walked up to me, and I didn't know who he was.
He said that you remembered him.
Right. Well, he asked me as soon as he approached me. He said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I'm the officer that investigated the incident at Hobgood." And then immediately, I was like, I knew who I was dealing with. So then I was like, "How can I help you?" And he was like, I want to see if I can ask you some questions about Chris and his motorcycle. I said, what about it? And the first thing he asked me if I knew where the motorcycle was. And I said, yeah. I didn't say yeah, but I did get like annoyed. And because I'm like, you just talked to him. Why you just left his job and drove.
And just to stop you for a second, but you were talking to Chris on the way home, obviously. You picked him up from Papa John's? You picked him up from his apartment? Where'd you pick him up from?
Papa John's. So it was literally just a stoplight down from Jumping World, and we were at Jumping World. And where his girlfriend was coming from, made more sense. And so he called me. He was like, "Can you give me a ride back to the house and Taylor take me to the apartment?" And I was like, "Yeah." So we picked him up, and so that's Chris was telling me because matter of fact,
you picked up Taylor also.
No, Taylor drove, and where like her family lives like out the opposite direction. So I think she was coming like from her family. My house is more in the middle, if that makes sense.
So was Taylor's car there at your house before you came home?
Yeah, Taylor's car was at my house.
Where was she? She was just hanging out there in her car?
No, so we have a fully finished basement. And so I think she was downstairs with my other son that was home. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So right, they probably didn't even know,
So you're on the way home from this outing that you took your kids on, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got some kids, obviously. We're going to hear about that a little bit later. And then you went to pick up Chris from the Papa John's, right? And now on the way home, he probably told you everything that happened, that this cop came over to him, was talking about the motorcycle. He probably told you this stuff, right?
No, he actually did not. When he had called me and asked me to pick him up, he had mentioned something about the cops talking to him, but didn't say what, because he actually thought that they were like still sitting out there. And I told him, like, who cares? Like, because he was nervous for me. I was like, who cares? But no, because we had the kids in the car, and we don't subject the little kids to stuff. We just don't. Garbage. For me, I feel like that's garbage, and we just don't subject them to stuff. So no, we actually didn't talk about it, and we don't live that far from where we were at. It was maybe like an 8-minute drive. So, you know, obviously he had left, that officer had left and just went to my house, which is why I knew that he had been there, which is why I was annoyed. Like, that was the limited, you know, extent of what I knew at that time. So that's why I was annoyed with this officer. But yeah, I did. I told him if he wanted anything else, he was going to have to get a warrant. He was going to have to leave. But then he tried to talk more and you know, ask more. And then I did. I cut him off and told him again, like, you are going to have to get a warrant if you want anything else. And you can call me aggressive, and you can say I was rude, and you can say I didn't cooperate, but that's I told you to leave. Huh?
Standoffish.
Yeah, like I don't think I was. He even says I thanked him. I wasn't. I was to the point. I wasn't gonna, you know, mess.
Yeah, this is where he says it. He says, "I told Natasha I was in the process of doing so right now, and would be back with her in just a moment to arrest him. She thanked me and went to her house."
No, he did not say it like that. He actually got mad. When I told him, when I inserted the right that, like, you need to get warrants and to do whatever else it is that you want to do, especially at my home, fine. I'll get a warrant to arrest your son right now. So make sure you tell him to stay there and don't go anywhere. And I said, thank you, and walked away.
So now let's continue. I applied for and was granted an arrest warrant, charging Joseph for speeding and felony fleeing and eluding. I decided any additional charges could be taken later at the conclusion of the investigation. Corporal Hart and I went to the residence to place Joseph under arrest. So at this point, you already took everybody inside.
Yeah. So when we got home, I told Chris to take the kids inside, the littler kids. And so he went inside with them. And after I thanked him, we went inside, and I told Chris, I said, you know, hey, you're probably going to get arrested. It is what it is, and we'll just get you out later. And so, you know, we already knew that he.
So he was inside the house at this point?
Mm-hmm. We were all right there in the living room. We have floor to ceiling windows, and then we have glass window above our front door, so you can kind of like see into the house. Matter of fact, one of the videos you'll see the officer, when he came to my house, was looking through my front windows.
Okay. So now Natasha met me outside. I asked her if she could get Joseph and advised he was under arrest. I had a felony warrant for Joseph's arrest signed and in hand and knew he was inside the residence. But instead of making entry to effect the arrest, I allowed Natasha to go inside and bring him out, which is actually the correct decision here. This is actually the first right thing that he did by not barging into your house and arresting him. He wouldn't be allowed to do that. So that was actually smart of him to allow you to get Joseph. So now what happens? A short time later, Joseph came outside, and I placed him in handcuffs behind his back. I checked the handcuffs for proper fit and double locked them. I emptied Joseph's pockets and provided his property to include a ring from his finger to Natasha to give to Taylor, who had come out from inside the residence. This was my first sighting of Taylor, as I knew her car had been at the house since my arrival. She didn't come to the door when I knocked, and she didn't arrive in the truck after Natasha brought Joseph to the house from Papa John's. So now he's actually putting Joseph under arrest. My next question to you is, did he continue to speak to Joseph and ask him questions? Or let's say Chris.
Yeah, so my boyfriend was he had stayed outside while the officer, mind you, it took him 7 minutes to get the warrant. So he went to the car, did whatever it is, and then 7 minutes later was back at my porch. And my boyfriend was already outside because he was outside with the dog. And he was continuing to ask him, you know, have you ever seen Chris on a motorcycle? Do you know, all of these different things. And my dog started barking. So I went back outside to see what the dogs were barking at. And that's when he asked me, can I go get Chris? He has a warrant or he was under arrest, or had a warrant or whatever. And I said, you know, what are you arresting him with? And a bunch of stuff. So he already had an attitude, right then. It was a bunch of stuff. So I was like what? And he was like, well, right now, felony fleeing and maybe reckless drive. I don't know what he said.
Fleeing and eluding and speeding.
Yeah. So I went and got Chris, and he came outside and just very quiet. He's a very introverted kid anyway, so he's just very quiet. He came out and he put him in handcuffs and he started patting him down and, and do you have anything on you? And then he was like, and Chris was like, no. And he's like, do you have a cell phone? And Chris was like, no. And at that point I said, he's going to plead the fifth and ask for an attorney. I said, Chris, go ahead and tell him. And Chris turned around, his head around and told him, and Officer Mills was, that's fine. I was making him mad. That's fine. And at that point I noticed his partner was down looking in my in my garage, which I had said stop talking to them, and I asked him, like, what are you doing? Chris is up here, so why are you down there looking in my garage? So he came up, and at that point the older kids did come outside. My other teenager and then Taylor, they had came outside because they were all downstairs, and I think they came outside because they thought since Chris was getting arrested, whatever situation was going on was over. But about that time when he went to take my son to the police car, he said, stay right here to me and my boyfriend. So I told the older kids, go back in the house. I don't want them, around whatever it is that's going on.
Yeah. So we're going to get to that in 1 second. But I just want to know specifically, after Joseph was put under arrest, was he spoken to or asked questions by the police?
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. After I sent them back in the house, I was standing there waiting for this. I was waiting for the officer to come back down. I thought he was going to give us a card. He was putting my son in the car, and I heard him start questioning him again. And so I said to him, he told you that he has nothing to say. Like, what are you doing? And it made him mad.
Well, did he read him his Miranda rights?
No, but I kind of figured that maybe he wouldn't, which is why I made sure to remind Chris to insert his rights before then.
Yeah, I mean, well, once he's under arrest, I mean, that's you can't ask any more questions until you read him his rights. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that didn't happen.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, and you'll notice if you read in the report, he leaves out the fact that Chris, pled the fifth and asked for an attorney, but he does admit to the fact that he continued to question him on, I think it was maybe another two different occasions to question him about a cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let's continue. So now look here, and it says here, I advised everyone to stay right here for a second. He's got that in quotes. As I walked Joseph to my patrol car, I immediately heard, and there's no report at all of any sort of conversation he had with Joseph once, or any sort of comments back and forth once Chris was under arrest. I immediately heard Natasha order everyone to go back inside. Right after he said, everybody stay right here, showing that you're not listening. I asked Joseph where his cell phone was, and he told me he did not have one, even though he provided me with his phone number a short time earlier at Papa John's. I noticed Joseph had phone numbers written on his arms with marker pen. This was odd to me, as most people I take into custody elect to bring their cell phone with them to obtain phone numbers from it at the jail. I believe Joseph was intentionally avoiding the ability for me to access his cell phone. Now he's trying to set up here what's going to happen in a moment, which we're going to talk about. But so this part.
That's funny though, because when he sent me to jail, he didn't let me take my cell phone, and I have a cell phone.
Well, did you have any numbers written on your arm?
Well, I had my phone in my hand, and he took it from me.
I placed Joseph in the rear seat of my patrol car and went back to the residence. Due to Joseph's cell phone containing fragile digital evidence of the crime, I elected to pursue a search warrant to obtain the phone so it could be forensically downloaded. In previous cases like this one, I have experienced great success, meaning speeding cases. That's what he's talking about. In previous cases like this one, I have experienced great success in obtaining digital evidence from the suspect's cell phone to include but not limited to GPS data, which can be analyzed and provide speeds of the violator as well as locations with timestamps, proving he was the one seen on the motorcycle the previous night. I mean, this investigation is turning into, we're going to have to get a digital down. We're going to have to get Celebrate involved. We're going to have to, I mean, it's unbelievable for a speeding. Anyway, I knew Joseph's phone would be inside the residence at this location, as Joseph just came here with his mother directly from Papa John's, where I previously spoke with him, and he likely wouldn't have left it anywhere else. Well, that right away says I knew it was going to be here because he likely wouldn't have left it somewhere else. That right away is a little bit contradictory, don't you think?
Right.
I mean, all you said before, all you said is that he gave him a phone number. He didn't say he has a cell phone. He didn't say it was his cell phone number. He didn't say that he has a cell phone. He didn't say where his cell phone was, if he leaves it at work at Papa John's, or maybe he left it in the car. But he knew. This police knew. This officer knew that it was in your house.
Right. Yeah, no, well, it's funny because even after he later obtained the warrant, we have it on video. My other son was videotaping. He walked up to the house with the other officers in the warrant, and he starts questioning everybody, my family that he detained. And he's questioning them about, do you know what kind of phone it is? Is it an iPhone? Is it an Android? Do you know what color it is? Do you have all of these things? And I'm like, well, you just told a judge that you knew that such a phone existed and you needed to go get it. Well, if you knew something existed, then you should know what it is. That's just how I feel.
Right. You would think. I mean, unless you can say, well, I knew that he had a phone. I just didn't know all the details. But like you said here, there's no evidence that he knew that he had the phone. Number one, where the phone was. Number two, which is very important for this case. And then now here, because the reason why he's laying this all out is because this is going to be the excuse of why he searched your home without a warrant. But we're getting there. So now, time was clearly of the essence, as there was an exigent need. And there's a reason why he's saying that word, that magic word, exigent need, to secure the residents / individuals at the residence to safeguard the cell phone from destruction. This exigency was based upon the totality of the circumstances. I wonder where he got that phrase from. As parties at the residence were being uncooperative, lying, and purposefully hiding from me, I believed without a doubt the cell phone would be destroyed or removed from the house if they were aware I was seeking it for its evidentiary value in the time it would take me to obtain a search warrant. So this is where it goes off the rails, because what he did here was he went into your house and he searched your house for that cell phone without a warrant. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So he went in and he went in and then he detained everybody and he arrested me and did what he called, or the department called, I don't know who's calling it at this point. I know the department did, a protective sweep. And he,
let's talk about that, because I think people have to understand the difference between that. So now, in his office, they claimed that this was a protective sweep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he, in the report, is not saying that this is a protective sweep. There's a difference. There's a very important difference. A protective sweep, perhaps, is if you're running into a house where a criminal ran into, and you want to make sure everyone there is safe. You don't need to go get a warrant, right? You want to make sure everyone's safe. So that's a protective sweep. Here, he's not saying that anyone was in danger. This wasn't protective sweep. This was because there was sensitive information on that cell phone, which was about to be destroyed, which he knew was in your house, because most likely he didn't leave it anywhere else, and he gave him a phone number, which means that the cell phone has to be in your house, and there's exigent circumstances to search your house. But that's a good point. The difference between, the protective sweep that the office said and what he claimed was exigent circumstances, because you were all about to destroy his phone with a sledgehammer in the back.
Right. That's what he claimed, but it was just my little kids and not my other teenager was in there, and then Taylor, but Taylor was watching my boyfriend's daughter, and she was terrified. And you can see Taylor in the video. She's just pacing up and down the hallway talking to her dad, because this is a crazy situation. It felt like it was just escalate, and he was scaring the little kids. The officer was, it was just a lot for them. And I think in one of the videos too, Taylor told him, as he's like making everybody get out, like Taylor told him, like, you're scaring these kids. And he told us he was looking for contraband. That's what he told us. He had reason to believe there was contraband.
Another reason. So now we have 3 different reasons.
Yeah, and that's on video. And he was like, everybody out of the house, I have reason to believe there's contraband in the house related to a case I'm investigating. And I told him, no, do you have a warrant? And he, again, I need everybody out of the house. And I said, no, do you have a warrant? And he said, fine, I'll clear it myself.
So let's play. I actually have this video, so let's play this. So we can all see it and we can talk about it. So let me see. Let me know if you can see it. Yeah, this is your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now let's just talk about the people. Who's that walking down the hallway?
That's Taylor. She's on the phone with her dad.
Okay, and then who's by the door? Looks like he's holding a phone.
That's AJ. He was videotaping because he had came outside, and I told him to go back in. So I don't know. He's just really smart, and nobody told him to videotape, but he did. He videotaped a lot. I'm kind of proud of him for that.
He learned from his mom.
He's probably seen a lot of TV stuff too, and was like, "Oh no, there's something wrong with this officer."
Okay, so everyone should brace themselves because watch this video. I think you may just hit the back of your chair. So here we go. So you're just asking him now, do you have a warrant to come into my house, right?
Right.
And he's not answering the question, it seems like, or he doesn't want to answer the question.
No, it shocked me and it scared me that he actually walked past me and went into my house. So my immediate reaction, and I guess that would be like anybody's immediate reaction or what we're taught growing up, is like call 911 for help, right? And I actually was scared that like something was going to happen. My first thing was like, oh my God, my dogs too. Like if he just barges in the house, I don't know how my dogs are going to act immediately. And like, what if he shoots one of them? And you can hear me say, like, I have small kids and dogs in here. Like, what are you doing? And so I called 911. I told him I was calling 911 for help.
You're calling 911 on him.
Yeah, because I didn't know what else to do. I was like, this rogue cop is like doing whatever he wants. And what if he harms somebody? Like I didn't know what he wanted or what his intentions were, like because he told us like contraband and now he's breaking into my house and I know he doesn't have a warrant. So I was like, what else could happen,
So now let's take a look what happens. All right, so now you're calling the cops on him, and as soon as you get through, he decides that's a perfect time to arrest you.
Yep. He wanted to take my phone from me.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like he was just...
I think he thought he hung it up. Because you could see like there's a couple still shots of that incident where somebody had took still shots and zoomed in on it, but he had pulled my hands all the way up to like almost my shoulder blades.
I mean, you see yourself,
I had to go up on my tiptoes and kind of turn because I'm only like 5'3" and he was hurting me. And he yanked my phone and gave it to his partner. And I think when he took it from me, he thought he hung it up, but he didn't hang it up. It was, the screen was just like he had, an iPhone, you can take it out of the phone port. So it was still connected. And I argued with his partner for a minute about giving my phone back. And his partner looked at Officer Mills and was like, do you need her phone for anything? And I was like, he doesn't need my phone for anything. Like what? I was still like, this can't be happening type. You know what I mean? Like I was. And then I thought 911 still would help. I still thought 911 would help. And no.
Well, they can't help if they can't hear you talk because your phone's taken away.
But no, so I actually obtained the 911 call. And when my boyfriend got the phone back, I was able to see that it was still connected. And I told him to put it on speakerphone. And I was like, she said something. And I said, are officers allowed to come in my house without a warrant? And about that time, Officer Hart said, come down here, and pulled me down the steps away from the phone. And I couldn't hear what she said, but getting the 911 call, it was like, ma'am, I can't answer that. And then about that time, Officer Mills took my phone from my boyfriend, gave his badge number or whatever it is that he gave him, and told him everything was fine. Everything was not fine. I wanted a boss there. You know what I mean? Like, everything was not fine. What is going on? Like, and so Officer Hart didn't take me straight to the car. He took me to the front of the yard, and I think the 911 operator, was right before he hung it up. I said something again. I was like, no, I want to know if he needs a warrant to be in my home. And Officer Mills was like, take her to the car. And so they took me to the car.
So he arrested you for obstruction because you wanted him to get a warrant before searching your house. Mm-hmm. And now he went and searched your house now that he arrested you and got you out of the way. Now he searched your house without a warrant. Mm-hmm. And what he's trying to make a case for in the police report, which is not going to work, is that, well, there was exigent circumstances. Like there's exigent circumstances, like we know, like, in the heat of pursuit, when you're chasing a bad guy. So then you got to maybe jump into someone's backyard. You don't need to get a search warrant because you're chasing a bad guy. That's exigent circumstances. Or if someone's going to go, if people are in danger. Or what he's trying to make the case for, and I did a little bit of research on this, is that what he's trying to make the case for is that if evidence is going to be destroyed, then you can also search someone's house without obtaining a search warrant. However, the only case that I've seen where you have that situation in Georgia is where someone was actively burning narcotics. Okay, so he was burning all the evidence of his crime in front of the cop's face, and the cop didn't have a warrant. So then the courts allowed that cop to go in and stop that because he's trying to destroy all evidence of the crime. Here, there was no clear indication that the cell phone was in your house. There's no indication that anyone was doing anything with the phone, that anyone was trying to delete anything from the phone or smash it with a sledgehammer, whatever in his mind he thought that may be going on in that house. So, and the case law that I saw is that the mere presence of evidence doesn't automatically mean that you can go into someone's house and say, well, who knows? Maybe they would have destroyed it, so therefore I get to go into their house.
Right? Imagine if that was the bar that we were setting. You wouldn't even need warrants. You know what I mean? Like, they would be doing
There's evidence of the crime that they can be destroying, which is, it's absolutely ridiculous, and that's not the law in Georgia. So, right. And they actually make this distinction very clearly, that just the presence of something with your ridiculous belief that, oh, well, maybe they're going to destroy it. You need more than that. You need to see much more than that. Like the other case where someone was actively trying to burn the evidence.
You know what I thought? I thought because his partner was down there looking in my garage, I genuinely thought, okay, he thinks a motorcycle's here. So, I was actually just going to smirk when he got a warrant and saw that a motorcycle wasn't at my house. You know what I mean? Like, nobody knew what he was acting insane about. No, I didn't know. Nobody knew. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably on body cam after they took me to the car and the lieutenant finally got there and I was able to get the lieutenant onto the car. I actually said to him, I was like, maybe if somebody knew what the hell he wanted, because he just started taking everybody and detaining them and arresting me and nobody knew what was going on.
So here's another question that I have for you. Was anybody asking you questions after you were under arrest without your Miranda rights being read to you? Did anybody read your Miranda rights?
No. I wasn't read my rights. Chris wasn't read his. I think Taylor at some point, but this was after they had already, coerced her and did what they did with her. At some point, he Mirandized her, but I don't even think it matters at that point. But
so
no,
was anybody asking you questions after you were in handcuffs?
I don't think so, only because he gave me to Officer Hart, and Officer Hart I didn't even know he could talk. And I more so, was asking him, like, how do y'all do this to people? Like, what is wrong with you? And I think at one point I asked him, do you have kids? Like, what if somebody came into your house and did that to you and your children? And, when the lieutenant and stuff came up and they came to the car, I had to scream for anybody to come up there. They put me in the car for like 20 minutes and I've never been in a cop car and it is soundproof. You can't hear anything. So I was screaming, hoping that somebody would hear me. and the lieutenant came to the car with like 3 other officers, and including Officer Mills' partner. And he asked me what I wanted, and I told him, or I asked, I was like, is it legal for your officers to come into my house without a warrant? And he told me, well, no, but that's not what my officer said happened. And so I looked at his partner, who was, I'm sitting here, it's Lieutenant Brookshire and I think 2 other officers here. And then Officer Hart was right here on the other side of the door, looking over the car facing my house. And so when he said that, I looked at Officer Hart and I said, well, you were there. Why don't you tell your boss what your partner just did? Because mind you, when he did that, it was only the 2 of them. That Officer Hart, would not even look at us, like would not turn didn't say anything. Nothing. So I looked back at the lieutenant and I said, I have camera. You can see the video footage. And he goes, he was dismissive. We'll watch the body cam. And I was like, here I am thinking if he had just listened to me for 5 seconds, I won't go to jail, because I didn't do anything. And I said, no, I have video footage. And he wouldn't do it. So I said, okay, well, just so y'all know, when I get out of here, if you put my face on the internet when I get out, your face is going to go on the internet too. And everybody's going to know what you all did at my house. And this was before I knew the extent of everything else that they did. I meant that because I felt I watched my child be so traumatized.
Talk about that. I mean, your children were all there. I mean, how are your children reacting? I mean, I heard some cries and screams right there. So what was going on?
Jameson already has a few disabilities, and some of those are related to anxiety and depression. They were really bad for a period of time. He's been in therapy for a while. He takes medicine. And so he already has like this attachment with me, and he, struggles with those types of things. So when they did that, they scared him so bad. Like when I got out and watched the video footage, I mean, immediately he was hysterical and like, please, was asking Officer Mills not to take his mom, and like hugging my boy. He was looking for somebody to comfort him, and he was like hugging my boyfriend from behind and looking up at Officer Mills and like, please don't take my mom. And he wouldn't even acknowledge my kid. But I watched video after I got out, and my son sat there. There were like 6 officers in my yard, and my 9-year-old sat there clenching my cell phone. And he's like, I need it. I have to because it was a piece of me. And he was, I can't breathe. I feel like I can't feel my body, and just screaming and like hysterical. And not a single officer offered to render aid, asked him if he was okay, comfort him. I mean, he was just so scared and so traumatized that they were taking me to jail. He, his 9-year-old little head probably thought that, I was gone and not going to come back. And
so tell us what happened now. So now you get arrested. You eventually get to jail, right? I mean, they put you in jail, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long were you in jail for?
Just until like the night, like that morning in the middle of the night. I got there. Actually, I was in jail with my kid. They put men and women in there together. So I was actually in there with my son. Yeah. Which is kind of weird, but, and I didn't know. I've never been to jail. But
well, there's an extensive call history from your house. I mean, I would think maybe one of those times you ended up in jail.
Which my son was smart, because, back to the phone number on his arm, I had actually, gave him, I have a new number, and I gave him my cell phone number. I was like, write it on your arm, because you have to be able to call. This was before I knew I was going to jail, and thankfully my other son has my old cell phone number from like 10 years ago. He's had it. So I knew his number by heart, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have been able to call anybody. But, we were smart, and it was like, here, they don't let you take your phones and stuff into jail. And the more items come to find out that you have on you, the longer it takes in the booking process, because they have to inventory it and all this stuff. So, he had got rid of his wallet, his AirPods, his keys, because he just came from work, and it's not like he was picked up on the street and didn't know he was going to jail. He knew he was going to jail. So that's why he had that on there. But yeah, no, they took me to jail. I had to get a mugshot. I had to strip down. I had to dress out. They had to fingerprint me. I had to stand in this X-ray machine, and it was not fun at all.
And then, okay, so then you get out, the next day, then essentially, right? And now what's going on with your case? I mean, all these obstruction charges that you're facing now, what's the story with it?
So I got out the next.
This was sometime when? Back in August?
Yeah, it was actually Labor Day weekend.
So what's going on? It's been a couple months now. So what's happening?
Yeah, so I got out of jail, and I pulled up my body cam, or not my body cam. Pulled up my my surveillance camera. Might as well be body cam. Because people are like, "Oh, I got to get body cam." I'm like, "Well, it's just going to be a different angle of what I showed, but okay." So I pulled it up, and this was when I saw Taylor got arrested. So they got the warrant for the house, and it was only for the inside of the house, and it was only for a cell phone. Finally, he got the warrant. They came back to the house, and that's when the people at the house found out what it was he was searching for. He started asking those few questions like, do you know what kind of phone it is? Do you know what color? Is their phone number?
Right.
And then they knocked on my door and announced themselves and said they were there with the search warrant. Which is funny because you just detained everybody and arrested me. Why are you knocking on the door?
Then they knock. They say,
I think it was for show because the other officers were there at that time now, and it was like, he couldn't just go walking on in, had to put on like he was doing it right. So, they went in for a few minutes, and like you could hear them talking because a couple of the officers had asked, like they were under the impression, I guess, that it was my son's house. And they asked him, well, where does he sleep? And Officer Mills went to explain that he lived with his girlfriend at an apartment. And then the officer goes, well, this is his girlfriend's house? Like it was like he was searching for this to be like his end. Right. Officer Mills was like, no, this is his mom's. And they're like, oh, you can kind of like see him turn away, like, what did we get ourselves into? A few minutes later, they searched for a couple minutes, and then Mills went back outside. At that point, he started asking Taylor, I think, to like pull up her phone and well, do you have his number or do you have his location? Start asking all these questions. And then he went back inside for a few minutes, came back out, and that's when he threatened everybody. He told everybody that was on the porch, if you have a cell phone and you don't give it up, if we find it, you'll go to jail. So that's when Taylor was like, well, I have his phone. And, I think it's her phone, and he was just using it. I don't know. But she had all of his stuff. And so, and
then he arrests Taylor, or not yet.
He not yet. So she gave him the phone, and at that point the other officers were out there too, including the lieutenant. And this is my boyfriend's trying to intervene a little bit. Mind you, he's kind of scared because everybody's going to jail. He knows what they did to him back in January. There's minor kids there. They need a parent. So he's trying to be he's trying to advocate as much as he can. But if you
they may have tracked him a couple months ago speeding also. Right. You never know.
If you are not letting Officer Mills do what he wants, like if you challenge it at all, he was taking you to jail. So, he tried like, hey, like I'm just, you've already taken 2 people to jail. Like I'm hoping that you'll cut her break. Like, and he goes, no, he's like, we're about to have 3, but I don't have any more handcuffs. And that's when Lieutenant pulled his handcuffs out and handed them to Mills. And Mills said, all right, you're under arrest for obstruction. So he walks over, and at this point, my son is beside Taylor, and he's videotaping again. And he puts her in handcuffs, and she's crying, and she's like, well, can I call my dad? And he goes, well, your dad didn't answer for me earlier. And she goes, my dad? And he said, yeah, I was calling him about your car. And she was like, well, he's been answering me. And can I please call my dad? And he said, no, you can call him from the jail. So he puts her in handcuffs, takes her phone from her, and then she stands up, and he goes, look, I'm just going to be transparent with you. I'm going to take you guys to jail. And when I do, I'm going to write out a warrant for your apartment. And then you guys are probably going to be in jail when I do. And to save me from kicking in your door and causing damage. And she goes, yeah, please don't. And he was like, do you have a key you can give me? And, she's crying and scared that he's going to break her door in. And so she's like, yeah, I think so, in my car. And he's like, well, let's walk to your car. So he walks her in handcuffs with the lieutenant and another officer to her car. And the keys were not in the car. And she goes, they're not in here. They might be inside. I can go look. They told her no, because she was under arrest. She needed to stay there. And that's when the lieutenant was like, I'll go look. And goes just walking into my house like he lives there and looks around on the kitchen table and takes keys from my kitchen table and then walks. And didn't ask nobody that lived there. Didn't have a warrant to do it. Didn't have consent from anybody. Just walked right in, looked around with his flashlight. It's bright as day in there. And takes the keys to my son's apartment off the kitchen table. Still, she thinks she's going to jail because that's where he said he was taking her.
Right.
And if you read the
handcuffs.
Yeah, and if you read the arrest report, it's like my sister has a master's in English, and if you read the arrest report, in English class in college, we would have gotten in trouble because you're missing a whole entire transitional paragraph. How did you get from here to here? Because he said goodbye, and then next thing you know, Taylor's inviting him into the apartment. So he drove her in handcuffs to the apartment, him and the lieutenant, and where she invited him in. And they used the keys that they took off my kitchen table, where they did a warrantless search. And you can,
what's interesting, Natasha, is that in the police report, in this arrest report, he does say that he read Miranda rights to Taylor.
Yeah, at some point.
That's the only place where I found it, I think. The only place where he says himself that he read Miranda rights was to Taylor. Nobody else was arrested that day. But go ahead.
Yeah, and he read them to her at some point. I don't know. It was after he was asking for keys and all that stuff. He didn't do it as soon as he arrested her. I didn't see it on any of the camera footage. And they were at my son's apartment for probably, I want to say, total time, and my son probably lives maybe 5 minutes from me, if that. So total time would have been that they were gone from the time they left my house, and then he didn't take her to jail. He brought her back here. Okay,
right, so he ended up releasing her.
Yeah, so you got two people arrested for obstruction. I go to jail, and she doesn't go to jail. Why is that? Because she's a 20-year-old young girl that you just coerced and threatened the shit out of, and you were able to get what you wanted. You didn't have to go.
He eventually cooperated.
Well, because he had already swore out a warrant with a judge to search my home. But if you listen to the warrant video, it sounds like you're searching my son's home because you didn't tell him that it was my home. You didn't tell him that you had already broke into it and arrested me and detained my children. He didn't mention any of that. So he would feel probably some kind of way if he had to actually swear out the warrant that he said he was swearing out for my son's apartment. Because then the judge would be like, well, what did I just give you a warrant for? Whose house was that? So they drove over there, and my son has cameras in his apartment too. So you can see where, they go in and
I wonder where he got that idea from.
Yeah. Hey, thank God. Really, some people might, even my boyfriend thought it was a little extreme. And I'm like, no, it's not. I have just seen some people have their lives destroyed for, if I can have video footage to show that, whatever, shoot, it was $50. It saved me whatever. But no,
it's super important to have it. If you can put it in like you did, look what it's going to do to your case. It's going to really shed a lot of light on this, and these charges should get dismissed, and then you're going to have a whopper of a civil rights claim. But yeah, go ahead.
So Taylor said that he kept messing with his body camera, and she wasn't sure if he was muting it or if he was turning it off and on, or what he was doing, but he was definitely doing something with it. And so I was like, well, that was interesting. But then you look at the video and it actually shows in the video him turning off or whatever it is, he's doing something with his body camera. If I had to speculate, because I'll speculate, they went into the closet apparently at my son's apartment. As they're coming out of the closet is when he's messing with this body cam. And I'm like, I wonder if he just didn't film the fact that he was like searching my son's apartment and then, turned it on when he was in the closet and then turned it back off. I don't know. But I know that he turned it off and then, did their little search and then supposedly left. Didn't leave the apartment. Somehow they ended up at the motorcycle. I don't think they put that, like how they got there in the arrest report, but it's in there.
It's going to be very interesting seeing that body cam footage because you're going to be able to get it.
I know. I've been telling them release it. The reporter, when he came to my house, he had made a call to the sheriff's department for a statement before they aired, and they didn't call back, but they called back while he was at my house, and they had told him, they had asked him not to air it and said that they had body cam, and he said, well, are you going to release the body cam? And they said no. And he said, well, I'm a reporter. It's not my job to insert myself into, whatever. If you want to release it or issue a statement. She was like, well, you need, you can see part of it. She was being mouthy. They called me mouthy. Didn't want him to air it. So he humored her. And my guess on her would be, because their spokesperson was a former Fox 5 news reporter. Mm-hmm. And so she is their spokesperson. And I'm assuming that's who it was that called me mouthy. But he called me after he watched whatever body footage that they offered. And it was him doing the protective sweep. That's what he told me. And then they issued that statement with the arrest warrant, which was totally or not the arrest warrant, but the news that aired, making it out to the public like they just chased some felon to my house and it was this big thing, you know what I mean? Which was not. It was not.
I think we have the correct charge here from Trevor Bovever. Felony mouthiness.
Yeah. Yeah, he did not. And that's like uncooperative. Uncooperative. Why? Because I told you to leave and get a warrant. And then also like you didn't even have the search warrant when you came back with the arrest warrant to arrest my son. He doesn't live at my house. I thought you were giving me a lawful order that he had an arrest warrant, go get him. Then come to find out his attorney is saying like he should have had a search warrant too to make an arrest at my home. Being right there on my sidewalk. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's amazing. So, I mean, hopefully, you're going to be filing a speedy trial, I'm assuming. And, if they ever do it, like they're sitting on it. Like it's like malicious. They immediately gave my son and his girlfriend court dates, like initial court dates. Mine has been sat on. It's coming up on 90 days. I think Officer Mills is set to testify before a grand jury against my son next week, and according to like a public subpoena that he was subpoenaed with last week. But they won't give me a court date. They're intentionally sitting on it. My attorney has sent them, a letter, has said things to them, but obviously they can sit on it, and that's what they're doing for some reason. Well, maybe they're reconsidering, so what we hope to hear anyway, Natasha, is that one way or the next, your cases, these charges will be thrown out and be dismissed because they're ridiculous. And then after that, you can have a good time deciding how many civil rights violations there are. I'm already counting a number. Obviously, all the Fourth Amendment violations we see right here, the illegal search and seizure, the unreasonable search and seizure. We also see the First Amendment retaliation claim by you calling 911 and then immediately you getting arrested. I wonder if that has anything to do with, a retaliation of First Amendment. And then there's possible Fifth Amendment claims. There's a number of civil rights claims that you've got here going. But the first step, I was so upset because I wanted him, like, I didn't think about anything. When I got out of jail, I did not think about anything civilly or even my own charges. I wanted him in jail. I felt like he committed criminal acts. You know what I mean? Like that was like abuse. And I'm a woman too. So like for me, it makes me feel like even more like I had this man break in to my home where my children are. And then physically what I felt like was assault me and take me to jail. And I wanted him criminally charged, which was
I had still held on to hope that maybe if my video got out there, because I felt like the way the lieutenant was talking to me, like I was like some sort of criminal and I was lying, and his officer was, but I was like hoping that if my video got out there and showed like what he actually did, that somebody in a position of authority would hold him accountable, and he can go have his mugshot and get his fingers printed. You know what I mean? And nobody, like, that is what is shocking to me still to this day. And what bothers me probably the most is, like, I can get the lack of accountability from the person who actually did it because they were bad enough to do it. I wouldn't expect, the accountability, but from like the department, or I have had like their spouses, for instance, the lieutenant's wife who works for she's the district director of community of supervision. She's the felony director. She has gone out of her way to find me on 2 social media platforms. One of them, she has left laughing emojis at my 9-year-old crying. And then just this morning I wake up and she's liking like different, the video from the civil rights was shared or whatever. And I had posted a comment on there and she's intentionally liking my comments. And I'm like, and I already filed a complaint with her department because when she left the laughing emojis, it was her business profile face. So that's how I found out like who she was. And I filed a complaint with her department because she's out here representing you guys essentially and laughing, and her husband's directly involved with like what happened. And so they don't care. They have no shame. And because people wear a badge, they will follow it to the grave. It doesn't matter. They'll put their own integrity on the line, and it's sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously terrible what you're saying. And I also just want to make clear that it's something that I always stress is that most cops are good cops. Most cops, I think, are doing a good job. They're putting their lives on the line. And that none of this is to take away from any of the respect that we should have to most good cops out there. And this is just a situation which completely was unconstitutional.
We had one officer, because there was 6 of them here. There was one officer. Matter of fact, it was the one that my son was videotaping, and he came up immediately, gave his badge number, and asked if we wanted a supervisor. He was the only one that was going to call for help. That one officer did not go into my home. He did not participate in the search. He hardly talked to the other officers, and he stood there and talked to my 9-year-old, after the initial him freaking out, talked to my 9-year-old, I think, about football and stuff, until, he was the only one that showed any sort of compassion and empathy and understanding. And, so, and I agree. I've never had, an issue. It's for me, it's not even about being a police officer. It's about a person being in a position of power to harm someone and harming someone. And that could be a medical doctor, that can be a police officer, but we have to hold those people accountable and weed them out and replace them with better people. You know what I mean? Like that's just how I feel. It has nothing to do with
I mean, Natasha, if you've been following what's going on with Massachusetts after the Karen Reed case, there's a lot of cleansing, shall we say, going on there because of what happened. All the bad cops are being weeded out, and they're being demoted or replaced, or some are honorably retiring, whatever. So, it's not just about the individual case, like you're saying. It's about, weeding out the bad actors and making sure that there's only good people in there. So, but again, like we said, one step at a time. The most important thing for you, obviously, is to get these charges dismissed. And then once those are dismissed, we can start, thinking about other avenues or other ways that we can make change in this area. So I want to, again, thank you so much for coming on, Natasha. It's been, over
you for having me.
A little bit over. And I think this is an important story to tell. And I'm glad that you're willing to come on. And this is all very personal for you, obviously. And it takes courage. And it's good to see that your rights, and it's good for everyone to have their rights. And if there's something that we learned from this, it's definitely that everybody should have cameras. Everybody should know their rights and not just, let people walk all over them, or definitely police officers, and
I would say go inside, like, because I've seen that comment too, like I was already outside, but I have learned my lesson. If they don't have a warrant, go in the house, shut the door, and lock it. Like, that's just, I don't think I will ever, I try to be, that's the thing is, like, I feel like I'm extending like a courtesy and like I don't want to be, nasty and mean. And like, there are people that will take advantage of that. And I've learned that now. So walk away and lock the door.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Well, thank you again so much, Natasha.
Thank
Thanks
you
for coming on. And we're definitely going to be following your case. And I hope that we stay in touch.
I appreciate it. Me too.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, that was Natasha. That's the new case. This is something that we have to keep on our radar, make sure that the right results and the right outcome happens in Natasha's case. And then, we'll see what happens from there. But obviously, like we said, the first step is get these charges dismissed. They should have never been brought. It's a joke. It's baloney that she's being charged with obstruction. She knew her rights. There was no reason at all. There's no exigent circumstances. This is a warrantless search. She was arrested for no reason for calling 911 on this cop, which she had every right to do. First Amendment right. Call the cops. Even on another cop. What's the big deal? You call the cop. That's what she was doing. I mean, that's what she was trained to do. That's what we're all trained to do. So she was doing nothing different. Obviously, she's not going to be just sitting there like, oh, well, sure. Okay. Do you mind if I just call the police? Now, of course, she's going to be upset about it. Who wouldn't be? You're just going to barge into my house. So yeah, so she was being a little aggressive. She was standing up for herself, which is good. This is what you should do. Just don't let yourself be steamrolled by these people who don't know, but don't protect your rights. So it's an important story. I'm glad that we got it out, and we'll see what else the new developments are with Natasha's case. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today on this Sunday. If you haven't yet at this point, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and as always, we will see you next time. Thank you again.